What's happening, everybody? We are live on Instagram today. How are y'all feeling? What's going on? And today we have interview with Akil. Oops, I did not mean to do that. What's good, DJ Kaz? What's good? So while we wait for Akil to show up, how are you doing? What's going on? This episode is sponsored by East Meets West Annual Festival. So if you have not bought a ticket, make sure to buy one already. Also, this is Pink Shoelace. Follow me on Instagram, pink.shoelace. Let's get on with it. So Akil he's from Playmas, Montreal. So he is going to bring the fire today. We're going to talk about Playmas, Montreal. We're going to talk about education for the youth. Oops, I should have turned on silent before I started this so I don't get a phone call. So, let me invite Akil. He's supposed to be here. Wait for him. What's good, Hollywoods? 22222. How are you? This is an interview with Akil. We're just waiting for him to show up. Instagram. Let me text him. Let me text him. There we go. Active now. So, this is Coffee with Pink, episode number 7. And today is actually an interview marathon. We have Akil interview today. Then we have an interview with XP the Specialist tonight at 7:30. And immediately after XP the Specialist, we're hopping onto King Moses. And then as soon as we're done with King Moses, we're ending the night off with interview with Malik Shahid. And Akil is online right now. All right, let me tell him, join the live. So Akil should be West Indy is unable to join. Unable to join. Unable to join? What's good, Mel Marcy? How is it going? Wow, we have some new viewers. Very cool. Awesome. This is kind of awkward because Akil he's right here, but I don't think he knows how to join an Instagram live. Join the live. Check my story. Let's see. This is kind of... So let's introduce each other. Mel Marcy says, "Hey boss, how are you?" I'm all good. I'm all good. Today was a calm day for me. It's not really much happened today, but tomorrow is going to be a big day for me. So that's pretty interesting. And if you have not already bought a ticket to East Meets West, I'd like to see you there. Unable to join. Why are you unable to join? Oof, this is awkward. Unable to join. There he is. He's in the chat right now. West Indy Anak invites. Why can I not? Akil, you're in the live right now, so could you please? There's a button under. Press it and says request to be on the live, and then it will ask you to join. And you can only do it on the phone. So if you're on the computer, it's not going to work. You have to use your telephone, iPhone or Android phone. So let's see. I'm trying to invite you on, but it says it's unable to get you in. So I hope. So while we wait for Akil to show up, let's play some music. And I'm going to play one of the songs I'm going to play on East Meets West. Is going to be the first. That's why I'm on my laptop. Let me set up my phone real quick. All right. He's on the laptop. That's why. All right. Problem solved. So let's wait for him to come. Akil. Let's vibe. Let's vibe. Yeah, yeah. So how's everybody doing? How are you feeling today? Today is a Monday. Oh, today's a Monday. Employed people be like, I gotta go to work today. I am self-employed. Anyways, let's wait for Akil to come. Apologies once again for the technical difficulties. While we wait for Akil, let's do some self-promo. pinkshoelace.com, get to know me. And I'm honestly really interested in Akil today, because I got some questions for him. I have some questions for Akil. This is... There we go. So, Playmas Montreal, for those who don't know, it's like an educational organization. It's Grenadian owned. So, the owner of Playmas Montreal is Gemma. She also did part of the Gemstar program. And they just recently did, oh, there we go. Who is Akil? Let's find out who's Akil. Because he's about to join. Let's get to know Akil. Okay, and there he is. This is Akil. People are asking, who is Akil? Who is this Akil person that I'm interviewing? So could you introduce yourself, Akil?
Yes, of course. Sorry for the technical difficulties earlier, as Hassan said. Everybody, I'm Akil Aline, and I am a member of Playmas Montreal Cultural Association. It's a, I think, 23-year-old Black community organization here in Montreal, and we basically hold cultural and other events throughout the year to spread Caribbean culture throughout the Montreal community at large. We also are in the midst of expanding a project that we just started this past school year called the Gemstar Scholarship Fund and the Gemstar Circle of Excellence Program, which in a nutshell provides scholarship, mentorship, and summer job and internship opportunities to high achieving students in the community, high school students. So in a nutshell, that's who I am.
Wow, just to name a few.
Yes, yes.
Wow,
yes.
So I know you are part of Playmas Montreal, and I wanted to ask you, Jem, if I'm not mistaken, Jem is the CEO of Playmas, right?
She is our founder, the founder of Playmas Montreal, and still our.
So, did you apply for the job? Did she recruit you? How did you start working with Playmas?
She recruited me. She's someone I've known for some time, just in Montreal's Black community. It's honestly, if you're involved in the community, it's hard not to become acquainted with Gemma Rayburn Baines at one time or another. And she, in sort of when she was deciding to launch the Gemstar program a year ago, I was one of the people to whom she reached out to recruit onto the board of the organization, to the board of Playmas Montreal, and I've been involved with them ever since.
Wow. So tell me more about Gemma and your relationship with her and how she recruited you.
We go way back. I myself mostly grew up here in Montreal since 1992. My family is originally from Trinidad and Tobago. Both parents actually immigrated to Canada, specifically to Montreal back in the 1960s, where they both attended Sir George Williams University, which is today Concordia University, along with a host of other Caribbean immigrants and international students at the time. And our family kind of bounced back and forth a bit between the two countries, between Trinidad and Canada over the decades throughout the late 20th century. But by the 90s, we were installed first in Toronto for 2 years, where I was born, where I spent kindergarten and first grade. And then since 92, we moved here to Montreal. So I mostly grew up in NDG for 6 years and then in Lachine on and off since 1998. And ever since then, I'd gotten involved in a lot of public speaking and debate activities, and I was really good at them, if I may say so myself. I also was known for doing a lot of speeches and other performances in the Black community I actually was written up a few times in the community contact back in those days, turn of the century, for you know, a lot of the activities, extracurricular activities I was involved in. And Gemma was one of those folks, or Auntie Gemma, as I personally address her, out of respect for my elders. She was one of those elders and leaders in the Black community who were always around, always at all the events, always involved. If she wasn't hosting these events herself, she was participating in some way, or even just supporting them as a member of the audience. So that's how she first got to know me. And in the 2000s, 2010s, I went to university in the States, came back for a couple of years, went back to the States to go to law school, graduated a decade ago. I spent a couple of years in Washington, D.C. doing civil liberties work, and I had this knee injury that kind of interrupted things. Had a few surgeries that didn't go well, had to come back here and get my knee replaced. That's a whole long story unto itself. But after I came back, I decided to make a career move into journalism, actually, into media work in general. And that was actually when I reconnected with Auntie Gemma, and she decided to help me, to recommend me for a couple of jobs that I actually applied for in sequence. So first I became involved in TV news reporting. If any of you watch City News Montreal, you may have seen me from time to time in 2018, 2019, working as a video journalist. Covered a lot of cool stories, got to interview people like Spike Lee, PK Subban, DJ Yella. And in fact, that last interview I did was at a hip hop town hall conference in the winter of 2019 during Black History Month that was hosted by Malik Shahid, who I think DJ Pink Shoelace has been mentored by, right? And so,
Yep.
there you go. And so Auntie Gemma referred me, recommended me for that job. And then after I switched from that to radio journalism, I next ended up working with CBC Radio Montreal for about 2.5 years. As a transportation reporter, and she was also able to refer me and recommend me for that position as well. And after I left that position last year, she recruited me to work with Claymass.
Yeah. Just want to welcome the viewers. What's good, K-Rhyme? What's good, Oscar? Latoya is in the chat. We love you, Latoya. We support you.
Yes, indeed.
So that was one heck of a story you just told me. There was Malik Shahid involved, which also we're going to interview Malik Shahid today at 8:30 p.m. So if you want to stick around, feel free. And
yeah, I did.
And I see also on your page, Fatima Wilson was attending at your events, including the Spice Fest event back in June 22nd, right? No, it was before that.
Well, the Spice Island Cultural Festival was July last month.
July, sorry, not June.
And Fatima, she's another person in the community with whom I go way back, because when I was in elementary school in grade 3, so this is 1993, 30 years ago, her father, Salah Wilson, who's been the guru of steel pan in Montreal and Toronto for decades, he came around to a lot of the elementary and high schools in the Montreal area and started up steel bands at each one, and he was the conductor and band leader at each one. So he's the one from whom I learned the fine art of steel pan, and of course she's his daughter. And after I graduated from elementary school and started high school at Royal West Academy in 1997, I think it was, he actually that same year happened to be founding the Sala and Steel Pan Music Academy. So the core of it was his family, including Fatima Wilson, and he also recruited a number of really players of all ages, kids, teenagers, adults, to join the academy. So I played with them on and off from then until as late as 2007, when we finally won the Toronto Panorama. And I think that was the first of 4 years running that we actually won the Toronto Panorama outright. So Fatima, I go way back with as well.
Yeah. And speaking of Fatima, she's also one of the performers at my upcoming festival.
I noticed.
So, viewers, if you have not already bought a ticket, we're selling out rapidly. It's only a couple days left. So, and it happens to be on the same day as the Gemstar what is happening on August 26th?
August 26th, and what's good about this is that it's actually earlier in the day than your event. So
exactly, so we can attend both.
Exactly. That's my plan. Basically, from 3 to 5 p.m. at 6767 Côte de Neige Boulevard, we are going to be holding a info session, essentially. We're going to be holding an info session for the Gemstar Circle of Excellence program. We're actually going to be, both Auntie Gemma and myself will be in attendance, of course. And we're going to be just, in essence, explaining the basis of the program, the scholarship fund, the Circle of Excellence program. We'll be explaining the whole school year's worth of mentoring that we're going to be offering to students who participate in the program, and we'll also be providing just really all of the information that everyone is going to need in order to know exactly what they can expect, who is going to be eligible for the program, who should apply. So we're really encouraging as many people as possible from the community to drop by, students, parents, even if you're not, because it's really going to be for students who are going to be in grade 11 in the Black community in this upcoming school year. But even if you're not in one of those categories yourself or not yet, please feel free to drop by, because we plan to keep this program going for as many years as possible. One thing I've personally noticed over the years is that there have been a lot of community institutions in the Black community and other cultural communities in the Montreal area that have a hard time lasting. For example, the summer camp that I went to when I was in elementary school, which was hosted in the school building of my elementary school, neither one of them still exists. The school itself has been closed down. That was Summerlet Elementary, which is where Sala Wilson first began teaching me steel pan. That's been closed down and replaced with a French school. That was at the turn of the century. And also the summer camp itself, the Patrice Lumumba Summer Cultural Day Camp, which was part of a network of cultural day camps. To my knowledge, they lasted for another some years after that, but I don't think they're still in operation, at least not in the same form today. So this is the kind of thing that we're trying to overcome. We're trying to maintain durability and sustainability in these kinds of institutions. So even if you're not in the ballpark just yet, feel free to drop by this information session, and we'll be happy to provide you with the information you need about the program.
Awesome. So let's talk more about events. So Play Marche Montreal has done many events in the last couple of months, including the Spice Festival, including the Business Excellence Awards, and Latoya was there, actually. That's where I met Latoya, at the Business Excellence Awards.
Yes, and she's a valued member of Playmass as well.
Yeah, and we have PBV Valera in the chat. Welcome. So tell me more about these events, and how do you think, what are your plans on coming up with such events?
Well, the events that we host, remember, are events that promote Caribbean culture in the Montreal community overall. So if you look at our some of our platforms online, for example, the Gemstar Circle of Excellence program has its own Instagram program and its own Instagram profile, forgive me, that you can check out. It's actually it's called Gemstar, G-E-M Star Circle of Excellence. And if you look at that on Instagram, you'll find information about not just the Gemstar program itself, but some of the other events that Playmass hosts year-round. You have a Caribbean Tea Party that recognizes trailblazing, innovative, and courageous women in the community across Canada. You have Montreal Fashion Week, which celebrates Caribbean-inspired fashion and culture. And, you know, we also participate in other events in the community where we're one of a number of community groups that take part. So, for example, we had the happening OBNL conference that took place in downtown Montreal, hosted by Group 3737, which is actually the local branch of a nationwide organization. And as a matter of fact, we've partnered with them. They have been one of our main sponsors, financial sponsors, for the Gemstar program, as well as our other activities. And we received a grant from them last March, in fact, throughout the winter, we were involved in the process of applying for the grant, and we were one of a number of community groups that were granted funding from them. So again, this is the Gem Store program, which I administer, is part of an overall repertoire of events that we host year round. And of course, everyone watching is very much invited to join and support us in any way you can. And just a quick word about that that last individual you just shouted out. That's my friend Peter Varela, who actually is one of my classmates and best friends from when I went to university in the United States at Princeton University. You see here, he mentioned in the chat, North Carolina welcomes you. He's actually a native of New Jersey, but has been living in North Carolina some years, and we both graduated from college 15 years ago. I was hanging out with him here in Montreal just a couple of months ago, and he's a successful entrepreneur in his own right. When he visited, I was able to introduce him to Auntie Gemma, and in fact, one of our classmates has actually done involved in Grenada, which is Auntie Gemma's home country, promoting their thriving spice export industry in recent years. So he's another, there you go, there's the flag of Grenada itself, and he's another great resource for us, and just another one of our supporters. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and Auntie Gemma, actually, I'm going to contact her for an interview like this, so look forward to interview with Auntie Gemma, because I'm interested in interviewing her and getting to know Auntie Gemma. So I actually attended the Spice, is it Spice Island?
Yes.
Spice Island Festival,
Yes.
because of Gemma. That's how I figured it out. I followed Gemma on Instagram, and then she posted it, so that's how I found it. So what made you guys decide to do such events? Because I know you mentioned that Cara Fiesta has been canceled. And do you think that the Spice Island Festival has anything to do with the cancellation of Cara Fiesta?
Well, I would say Spice Island is a longer running institution in the community than that. I myself have attended in past years, even during years when Cara Fiesta was still being held. So it wasn't held just because Cara Fiesta was canceled, but it was a good thing that it was held, because that way we were able to provide celebration of Caribbean culture, of an important Caribbean island, in spite of the cancellation of Cara Fiesta this year in particular, and that's a good thing. But no, Auntie Gemma has been involved in celebrating, again, Caribbean culture and Grenadian culture in particular for quite some time, and even around the same time as the Spice Island Festival, it just so happened that a member of the Grenadian government, Grenadian cabinet, happened to be visiting y'all at the time, and so I think it was, if I remember correctly, it was the very next day she was able to hold an event at Green's Restaurant in Lachine, not too far from where I live, a town hall event in which this Grenadian official was able to talk about just latest developments in public policy in Grenada itself, and give the community here an opportunity to connect with the Grenadian government. So that was another example of a great event that Playmass was able to be involved in, and that the Spice Island Cultural Festival organization was also able to host.
Yeah, and thank you for clarifying that, because I guess it was a bit of a misunderstanding, because when I came to Spice Island Festival, I think it was you who said that in spite of Cara Fiesta getting canceled, we're still on the road.
Oh,
so
yeah, definitely still celebrating the Spice Island Cultural Festival. Most definitely. My apologies if I was unclear at all. It wasn't that like Spice Island Cultural Festival was sort of officially a replacement for Cara Fiesta, but instead an event, a community institution that I'm glad we've been able to keep going, particularly in light of the fact that Fiesta was canceled this year.
And it better not be canceled again, because Valerie, man, please, Cara Fiesta Part 2.
I hear you on that. I completely agree.
If Cara Fiesta gets canceled again, we're gonna make our own Cara Fiesta, me and you, bro. East meets West. collaboration with Spice Fest, two events at the same time equals Scarefesta. What do you? Maybe, I don't know.
I like your thinking. I think you have the right spirit and the right thought.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And
Most definitely.
so, Akil, so what would you mentioned in the beginning a whole list of the things that you do as your career. So where do you see yourself take your career in the next, let's say, 5 years? Where do you see yourself?
I see myself doing mainly what I went to law school to do, which is helping to educate the public in general about the law in general and all of the other factors that play into it. I've been passionate about particularly politics, which was my major in college and university, political science, although at Princeton at the time they just called it the politics department. I've been passionate about that and about history, particularly since I was a young kid. And I would very much like to be in a media space where I can, whether it's through hosting a program similar to what you're doing right now, or whether it's through working as a commentator in that context, helping to educate the public about political events, about developments, especially historical developments that feed into politics. I've always been passionate about history because I've always believed that true life, real life, is even more fascinating than fiction. And there's a saying that I learned years even before I got into journalism, which is that journalism is the first rough draft of history. And it's true. If you look at what historians do, especially if they're studying things, events in history that occurred after the development of modern mass media, TV, radio, and so on, and most recently the internet, a lot of what they do is looking up the way that the media covered past events as they were originally happening, and then looking at the historical evidence and seeing where did the media maybe go wrong. In fact, one of my favorite accounts to follow on YouTube, for example, the program the New York Times has called the Retro Report, which I highly recommend. They literally make stories, extended videos of maybe 10 minutes or so every month or two, where they'll go back in time, study a major story that occurred in the past, and then look at it through fresh eyes with decades of hindsight, where they can say, what did media outlets back then, including us ourselves at the New York Times, get wrong about our coverage of these issues, and how can we relate them to things that are going on today, and how can we learn lessons from the past so that we do a better job of covering what's happening today. Every time I watch the news, I see, especially now with having had a few years of experience as an active journalist myself, I see things in the coverage of what goes on in the media today, and I say, okay, I think they could do this better. They could actually communicate this information better to the public, because these journalists are out there, they're doing their best, and they're working hard. I know from experience how hard the work is. Never let anybody tell you that being a journalist is easy, especially nowadays. But there's always room for improvement, and I would love to help make that improvement happen. I remember one of the things I wanted to say when I started that TV news job 5 years ago at City News, but I forgot to say it at the time, was, you know, journalism is the first rough draft of history, and I would love to help be one of the writers to help write that draft myself. So that's where I see myself in the next 5 years or so.
So are you thinking of opening your own news or just joining already existing news software
Well,
or media?
that's a couple of options that I'm still mulling over in my mind. Typically, it's easier to sort of get in on a going thing, a going concern, a media outlet that's already out there and has a reputation. But it's also tricky because that means you have to play by that organization's rules and approach the task according to their methodology, which can, I mean, it really depends on the story and the reporter and so on. But at the same time, you know, I do have a YouTube channel of my own. If you look up my full name on YouTube, Akil Aline, first name Akil, last name Alleyne, you'll see a whole host of videos that I've posted in the past. And I've also been considering starting a podcast of my own in the months to come. So, you know, definitely stay tuned, and we'll, you know, time will tell exactly which direction I end up taking. But I'm sure the future is going to be pretty eventful in that regard.
Yeah, I'm sure. I see you being a journalist.
You are a very journalist person, honestly, Akil. Because when I came to the Spice Island Festival and you did the speech about how the black culture is underappreciated in Montreal, I agree.
Mm.
I remember your speech at the Spice Fest. I remember you saying it.
Yes, that's right.
And honestly,
And I should just mention, for those who weren't able to attend, DJ Hassan is actually referring to a tribute that we were able to hold at the Spice Island Cultural Festival in tribute to the late, great Egbert Gay, who was the founder and publisher of the Community Contact newspaper. And like I mentioned earlier, I was one of a number of black community figures, particularly young people, that Egbert Gay was always shouting out and reporting on in the community, the pages of the Community Contact. He unfortunately passed away suddenly back in the month of June of a massive heart attack, which was a huge blow to the community. And Auntie Gemma and I were able to attend, and I think a few other members of Playmass were able to attend his funeral at the time. And tons of people from the community showed up. And we decided we couldn't let such a momentous event pass by without paying Egbert a decent tribute. So actually, Dan Delmar, another a journalist acquaintance of mine from here in Montreal, he was able to put together a panel discussion at the Spice Island Cultural Festival, including myself, Alain Babineau, and Rowan Higgins, all from the community, all from the black community, all folks who knew Egbert well. And we were able to discuss a number of issues that Egbert himself has commented on and covered throughout his career. So right now, folks in the community are trying to put together a team to ensure that they can keep the Community Contact going, because one of the issues we discussed on stage that day was how important local journalism is. And yeah, that's what we were up to when I was giving that speech.
now you're talking a lot about Edbert Gay. Egbert or Edbert?
Egbert with a G.
I apologize for misspelling his name. Now, could you introduce Egbert Gay to the viewers who may not know who that is?
Yes, Egbert was a native of Grenada, actually, like Auntie Gemma, but he moved to Trinidad and Tobago at a young age, grew up there the rest of his childhood, and then immigrated to Montreal. So in a sense, he was a double, right? He from Grenada to Trinidad. A lot of people don't know this, but there historically was a lot of migration between various Caribbean islands. In fact, even in my family, on both sides of my family, certain branches of the family came to Trinidad from other Caribbean islands like Barbados and St. Vincent. And then Egbert, as an adult, immigrated to Montreal decades ago. He was well acquainted with virtually everyone in the black community, particularly the English-speaking black community, including my own parents. He reported on me, my older brothers, when we were involved in community institutions and activities when I was growing up back in the 90s, early 2000s. In fact, longtime fans of underground hip hop in Montreal might have heard of my older brothers. There was Manchild of the Butter Babies. He's my oldest brother, and Sekou Toure of the Autobots, later known as the Bots Dynasty. And they're both out of the country now. My oldest brother's in Philadelphia, where he's a college professor, and my middle brother's in Trinidad, working with the TNT government. But we were just a few examples of folks in the community who Egbert was quick to promote and to just educate the whole community about. And so that's why when unfortunately he met his demise, there was such a big stir in the community, and still is a big stir in the community about his loss. Basically, if you go on the Montreal Community Contact website, or if you visit barbershops, restaurants, and other community institutions around Montreal, you'll see old copies of Community Contact, and you'll see the kind of work that Egbert did, keeping everyone in the community informed about what was going on in the community. He basically founded the publication, I think in 1992, if memory serves, more or less single-handedly. And he ran it almost single-handedly with a small team and kept it going for the past 30-odd years. And so he left some very big shoes to fill. That's what the community is trying to do as we speak, is fill those shoes.
Yeah, I want to welcome in the chat Niveen, that's my auntie, just like your aunt Gemma, that's my auntie. We have DJ Sufyan, what's good? We have Dondre in the chat, Izzy
Welcome.
Campos, 1010, Bobby in the house. Bobby's in the house. That's that's Kai in the chat. P and PB Valera, which is also your friend you mentioned earlier.
Indeed.
So when Edbert Gay died, rest in peace, may God bless his soul. What do you think that the community lost now that he's dead?
The community lost a major voice and a major, not only, well, I should say, not only someone who helped keep the community informed through community contact, but also through his participation in other media outlets as well. So, for example, when major events happened in the community, he was quick to serve as a resource, commenting on those events and those issues for the larger Montreal community. Even when I was working at City News, for example, I actually interviewed him for at least one, possibly a couple of the stories that I covered. I do remember, I think it was in the winter of 2019, a report was issued about discrimination and police brutality in the Montreal police force. And I was able to interview Egbert himself as a source, and he was able to give a very incisive comment about the importance not only of recruiting more black police officers and police officers of color in general, for example, but also making sure that the incentives that all police officers face change for the better, to make sure that officers of all backgrounds have the incentives that they need not to engage in discriminatory policing and to engage in a more inclusive and socially just approach to policing. Because as he said, it's important to recognize, even if you are a police officer who's black or Latino or Middle Eastern or what have you, if you are dropped into a system that is still tainted, then you are either going to have to play by that system's rules and operate more or less the same way as any other officers within that system, or you're going to be forced out or silenced, muzzled, what have you. So it's important to change the system and not just the individuals with it, not just change the players, but change the game, so to speak. Also, Egbert was kind enough to even give me an interview for my YouTube channel a few years ago, comment on the COVID-19 pandemic and how it was affecting folks in the community. And we were actually able to use a brief clip of his voice answering one of my questions about some recent developments in Quebec politics, particularly on the field of immigration, on the issue of immigration, that we were able to use in that tribute that we did in the discussion panel at the Spice Island Cultural Festival. So, and of course, I can't forget to mention this. Egbert was also part of the, I think, Gang of Four panel that commented on CJAD radio for years. He was one of the main commentators on that network, and a number of them showed up at his memorial to see him off, naturally, because while he was often disagreeing with the viewpoints that were expressed by the other participants in the program, there was always a mutual respect and always a mutual camaraderie that existed between him and them. And even myself, I had the occasional disagreement on some issues with Egbert from time to time over the years. And, he never held back from sharing his views. He was never afraid to stand his ground and stick to his guns, so to speak. But at the same time, there was never any issue of him holding it against you personally just because you may not have seen eye to eye on a given issue. And we could use a lot more of that in society at large nowadays. There's been a lot of political polarization in society here in Canada, Lord knows in the States, and around the world. And now more than ever, we need more and more Egbert Gays and folks like him in political discourse and in democracies the world over.
This was said. You actually answered one of my questions that I was about to ask you about police brutality in Canada versus in the USA.
Interesting.
Do you still think there's a difference between police brutality in those two countries?
Based on what I've read and seen, I would say one of the main differences is that there's more statistically, mind you, there's more violence overall in American society than there is in Canada. But that's not to say that there isn't any in Canada, nor is it to say that, you know, whether it's police discrimination in particular, or whether it's just institutional racism in general. It's not to say that that doesn't exist here as well. One thing I've had to push back against ever since I was in high school, mind you. I remember when I was in grade 11 or grade 10, or I think it was grade 11, I participated as a panelist on a panel at a student conference hosted at Lower Canada College, really high quality private school in NDG. For those who don't know, where I actually ended up going to their pre-university program, grade 12, in, well, actually, that was just over 20 years ago when I graduated, started at Princeton afterward. And I remember this was a student-run, student-organized conference. And I remember being on the panel, and one of the whole idea of the conference was Destiny. The name of the conference was Destiny Quebec. And so the idea each year was to bring in guest speakers who were in very prominent fields in society, journalists, politicians, business people, athletes, etc., and have them discuss their views on where Quebec society and Canadian society as a whole was headed in the future. And I remember when I was on that panel that year, I got one question about the issue of racism, and I remember the student who was emceeing the whole of that particular panel discussion, facilitating it, I should say. He asked a question of all of us panelists that was prefaced with the remark, our neighbors to the south, meaning the United States, have a long history with racism. And I remember thinking to myself, all right, so I know how I'm going to have to answer this question. So I made sure that the first words out of my mouth when it was my turn to answer was, Canada has its own history of institutional racism, and against Black Canadians, against Asian Canadians, against Indigenous Canadians, Lord knows. And we've seen a lot of indications of that in just the last few years with the Wet'suwet'en protests in 2020, right before the pandemic hit. We had, of course, the issues of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and the scandal, really, over how the residential school system and the unearthing of the remains of a lot of the kids who had disappeared and were buried on the grounds of these residential schools. I mean, the examples go on and on and on. So I would say when it comes to an issue like police brutality, it's important for Canadians in general not to adopt the attitude that, you know, we're the good guys. Canada, we don't have these problems. These are American problems. Racism is an American thing. This is something, also an attitude that I encountered when I was in the States, where I spent almost half my adult life so far. A lot of my American friends were so accustomed to hearing racism covered as an American problem that when I told them as a Canadian that we had our own issues with those problems up here in Canada, they were often shocked. And I mean Americans of color themselves. I remember 10 years ago, I was living in Washington, D.C., doing an internship program. I was living in a house with, I think, 4 or 5 other interns in the same program I was in. And it just so happened most of us happened to be non-Caucasian. And I remember I was talking to some of them, and when I would mention the racism in Canada, they were shocked. You know, they said, really? Canada too has these issues? And I said, yes, racism is not just an American thing. And I even had to school some of them about the history of slavery throughout the Western Hemisphere, that it wasn't something that just happened in the United States. It happened in the Caribbean, happened in Latin America. Brazil was the main target for enslaved Africans being transported to the New World for most of the transatlantic slave trade. Just to name one example. If you look at the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II, that happened here in Canada as well. Japanese Canadians were taken from their homes in British Columbia, particularly, and forced to live in internment camps. You had when Chinese immigrants built the railroads in the United States and faced horrible conditions there. Same thing happened building the transcontinental railroads here in Canada. So there are all different kinds of different examples of how racism has afflicted Canadian society, including police brutality. And that's something that Canadians in general need to face up to and not sweep under the rug.
Well said. Round of applause. It's like this is the mic drop moment right there. So, this concludes the interview with Akil. Do you have anything else you want to share before we end the interview?
Just one more time, I would love to promote very quickly one last plug for our information session coming up again on Saturday, August 26th in room 697 at 6767 Cotonou Boulevard, Community Center there. We'll be having this event from 3 to 5 p.m. Saturday, August 26th in room 697, promoting the Gemstar Circle of Excellence program. Feel free to show up, come one, come all, and find out information about that program. And then the beauty of it is, right after that, you can head on over to St. Denis Street, I believe it is, for Hassan's, what is that? East by West event, yes? East meets West, meets West event.
East West.
That's we're going to be, Hassan's going to be having, and I'm going to be happy to join myself.
You are more than welcome to come, Akil. I hope you used code AWESOME in checkout for a discount on your ticket.
Lovely.
And I hope everything is good with you. See you next time. Peace and love.
Yes, indeed.
And stick around, viewers. Stick around. We have another interview at 7:30. We have 3 interviews actually. XP the Specialist interview, King Moses interview, and lastly we'll end the night with Malik Shahid interview. We are booked today. And then tomorrow another interview, so tune in, pinkshoelace.com, follow me on Instagram, check out my Spotify, or don't, maybe an album is coming soon, who knows. So have a good day, and I'll catch you later, my guy. It's been nice talking to you.
You got it. Thanks so much for having me. Peace.
Peace.